Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot, and I'm armed with a cart and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. Welcome back to the East Riding of Yorkshire. Still a very cold East Riding of Yorkshire this morning, and today I'm looking at a village that is the typical definition of linear. If you look at this one on the map, you can see it's all laid out along one very windy road running from north to south. Now, because it's so linear and because it's actually quite large, I'm going to have to do this one by parking the car in three separate places. Firstly, somewhere up there, there's some roadworks or something up there, so somewhere around there, then moving it to the centre and then moving it to the north, and yeah, so three little walks around effectively in the same place, and that place is Seaton Ross. So, slight correction, I thought I was in the south of Seaton Ross to begin this episode. I'm not, I'm actually in the north. I've come up a different road to the one I thought I'd come up. So we're in the north of Seaton Ross here, so we're going to work our way south. Seaton Ross is situated approximately 6 miles west of the market town of Market Wheaton and 3 miles northwest of the village of Holme on Spalding Moor. According to the 2011 UK census, Seaton Ross Parish had a population of 565, an increase on the 2001 figure of 545. It describes itself as a village of windmills and sundials because there's plenty of both in this one, and we'll be seeing some fine examples later. The village had always been a farming area with several large farms which survived to the present day. However, by the 18th century the village was also noted for its production of bricks that went into the construction of many of its current structures, such as the brick parish church. Here's the first windmill. This is Old Mill, which was built in the early 18th century. In 1850, Old Mill had a steam mill built close to it to allow flour milling when there was no wind. I'm zoomed in with my phone camera a little here so you can see what remains of the mill and its buildings. Old Mill had 5 sails, whilst New Mill, which we'll see later, had 4. The village was recorded in the 11th century Domesday Book using its original name of Seaton or Seaton. This name was derived from the Old English word sea, meaning a body of water, and ton, meaning an enclosure or farmstead. The body of water in question is likely to be the marshes around the village and towards Holme upon Spalding Moor, which have largely been drained and cultivated since that time. There's much more detailed historical information on the information board here, which shows the parish boundaries located within this garden on North End. Scratch that, I've just found a map here at something called the village plot. That's this little garden I just took a shot of a minute ago. That's the official name of this, it's the village plot. And here's a map of Seaton Ross, and as you can see, we're here at number 1 at the north end. It's also got the parish boundaries, which is very helpful. Now, as you can see, look how windy this is. And apparently, according to this, it's over a mile long, and there you go. So we've got a north end, we've got a south end, and then this is the bit in the middle of Church Lane. But look here, we've got footpaths. I didn't see these on Google Maps. Sometimes it doesn't show you everything. So really, I don't need to move the car. I can just walk straight down the road, pick up this footpath here across South End, and come back to West End here, and I'm virtually back to where I started. So yeah, I can walk the whole thing. That's good. Oh, and by the way, this board has some fabulous information on it, and you had better believe I'm taking some pictures of this. As well as the village plot, also here you'll find a children's play area, playing fields, the village hall, and a public house called the Black Horse, all of which we'll be seeing. Here's one of those sundials, and it's not small. This one is Dial Cottage. There are 3 of these in total, the other 2 being on Dial Hall Farm and on the wall of the church. The Domesday Book shows that the area was an established manor before Norman times, paying a very large amount of tax in comparison to its size. The village gave its name to the local ruling family, the Seatons, who held the land for a time until they had their property seized as a result of their support for the Scots during the reign of Edward I. The village was passed by descent to the De Ross family, who owned much land in the area, including that of nearby villages of Storwood and Melbourne, and the village came to be referred to as Seaton Ross for the first time. During the Wars of the Roses, Seaton Ross would pass to the Earl of Worcester, from where it eventually found its way into the hands of the Everingham estate. Now we're coming onto Church Lane, which is the centre of the almost mile-long street that Seaton Ross is laid out upon. Along here, there's a lot of the village's amenities. Seaton Ross's brick and tile works was located on Lodges Road, almost opposite Dial Hall Farm. A large proportion of Seaton Ross's original dwellings were rebuilt in brick by the Everingham estate. New buildings also sprung up, including the Wesleyan Chapel and the village's school. If you're wondering about the street names, the medieval village was centred on a cross which influenced them, and they would eventually become North End, West End, South End and Car Lane. One of the oldest buildings in the village is St Edmund's Church, whose current structure dates from 1789 and is built on the foundations of an earlier church which can trace its records back to 1653. Up above the door to the church you'll see the third of the sundials. A little smaller this one, all 3 sundials were made by William Watson between 1825 and 1850. He was a local surveyor. The church had some alterations in 1953 and it was designated as a Grade 2 listed building in 1967. This was the christening place of celebrated abolitionist William Wilberforce in 1759. As well as the church, there were 2 chapels in Seaton Ross, both now having been converted into houses. The village hall was originally a national school and could accommodate up to 90 children. It closed in 1961 and became the village hall, and later it was extended in the 1990s. Seaton Ross also has some buildings which have changed their usage. For example, where the modern day Swallow Cottage stands, there used to be a butcher's shop, Simpson's. Okay, so we found the phone box. Now, unlike Fogathorpe, where we were last week, I don't think there's going to be an alphabet on the side of this one. But what there is a free-to-take village map that you can find in here. Let's see if we can find it. Somewhere in here. Not that I can see it. There may not be any left. Maybe that's something for Seaton Ross Parish Council to do. Stock up the maps that are in here, that are supposed to be in here. I can't see them. A site of historical note in Seaton Ross is the Ladywell, which is a natural spring located in fields to the south of the village. Not much is known of the history of the spring, but as with other such sacred pools in the county, it's likely to be a place formerly dedicated to the goddess Freya and reappropriated by an early Christian missionary as a shrine to the Virgin Mary. Travelling south out of the village several hundred years ago, you'd cross something called the Priest Bridge, part of the route used by the monks from Bursey Chapel who piloted travellers from Howden to York. Here's the playground off South End as we journey towards the end of the village. It, together with the playing fields, is run as a charity. Seaton Ross is famous for the Seaton Ross Show, which began as a village feast and grew into an annual 2-day fair of produce, livestock, crafts and country sports. It continued as Seaton Ross Feast, which was celebrated annually until 2007. After a break of 7 years, Seaton Ross Fest, a small music festival, was started to create a community event in lieu of the feast. Here's the Black Horse, which is now the village's only pub. There was also another one called the Blacksmith Arms too. The Black Horse is dog friendly. Owlet Hideaway is just behind the pub. It's a set of 4 holiday lodges that are described as the perfect place to come and relax and listen to the birds. Okay, that footpath I was speaking about earlier, I found it. It took a little bit of finding actually, because there's no sign pointing to this from the road. I just had to guess that this was it, and yes, it is indeed. And I can use this to get back to West End, and by default get back to North End and back to the car. Let's have a look at what's down here. All that's left to do now is walk through some rather wet and muddy fields along this footpath which runs from Southend to West End to complete the main walk. I'll take this opportunity to mention RAF Melbourne, which had a big impact on Seaton Ross. It's just over the border into Melbourne and was requisitioned by the Royal Air Force as a light airfield and rebuilt as a standard RAF bomber command base, from which 4-engined aircraft flew operational sorties. There's a memorial outside the village dedicated to the crews of the 109 aircraft that were lost from the airfield. We'll finish this video at that memorial. The airfield ceased operations in 1945 and stopped flights in 1946. It's now owned by York Raceway, who host drag events on the old runways throughout the summer. We've now reached West End and there's just enough time to squeeze in the demographics. Seaton Ross is 99.3% white British. It covers an area of around 14 square kilometres and has a population density of 37.35. And the average house goes on the market here for £385,000. Okay, so I'm back where West End meets North End at the Parish notice board. So all I've got to do now is walk back to where I began. So that means you guys are owed just one thing, and that of course is the picture bit. Hit the music guys, here it comes right now. As we head for the RAF base, we pass the second windmill. This one is known as New Mill, and like Old Mill, it too used to grind corn. It was last sold for £1.7 million. Right, to finish with, I've had to come over the boundary and into Melbourne because marked on Seaton Ross's map at the village plot was this. A memorial to number 10 Squadron 4 Group Bomber Command, World War II, 1939 to 1945. Didn't make sense to come here in the Melbourne episode, which is the one that's coming up next. I thought it'd be easier to include this here. But Melbourne is next, and it's that away, and that's where you'll find me next week. But for now, this has been the Parish of Seaton Ross, and I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out. Now, just before I go, there's much more to Seaton Ross than what I've shown you. Have a look at this fantastic website called seatonross.org. It basically tells you everything you need to know about the village, from bygone days up until the present day. There's far too much on this website to put it all in one video, so I strongly suggest taking a look. There's a link in the description.